I'm going to ask you guys, do you think, because this is what's happening in New York, I mean, would you rather fight your own fire than have an unvaccinated firefighter show up to fight that fire for you? I mean, this is the question I'm asking New Yorkers to answer.
The part that bothers me is that the testing element of the mandate seems to have gone by the wayside. To me, if and I think natural immunity ought to count as well. Like if you can demonstrate antibodies, from having a previous infection, or if you're willing to submit to regular testing, then that should be fine. I don't necessarily care, whether or not they jab themselves, as long as they're taking steps to protect the public. What I don't like is when people can't understand the idea of doing this for the public good. So if the firefighters, the police would be willing to test or be willing to take an antibody test, then that seems like that's going a long way. I also think, though, when people are making a personal decision, that they aren't factoring in enough the wild card of long-term COVID risks. They focus so myopically on the risks of the vaccine. And sure, there are side effects to the vaccine, and we don't know what the long-term effects will be, because this is a new thing. But they focus so much on that they miss the question of what potentially could be the long-term consequences of COVID. Long COVID is a thing for some people. We also don't know, because it's this vascular thing that gets in your bloodstream. It's a new novel virus. We don't know how it's going to affect people down the line. And so just kind of saying, you know what, I'm in good shape, I'll get over it easily. Maybe you will, and maybe you'll never have nothing down the road. You'll never have anything down the road. But you don't know that, and then people have too much confidence that and are too afraid of the vaccine relative to that wild card.
It's very unknown. It's unknown on both sides, but I would say where there's risk, because there's risk for both. Because we don't know with either, and that's a great point. But where there is that risk, I think there should be that choice for either, I suppose. I mean, I don't know if you have a choice on whether or not you get COVID. I guess you could hunker down and stay safe. Plenty of people have been able to do that.
Go to the moon. Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, I agree. I think there should be choice, and I think the right choice for the overwhelming majority of people is to get the vaccine, because, look, a lot of people are going to they're going to get COVID, or they're going to get the vaccine, and then even if they got the vaccine, they might get COVID, and then they're going to, if they hadn't got the vaccine, they're going to wish they had it, because they're going to be sicker in many cases than they otherwise would have been. But that, for me, that's totally, what one ought to do, for me as a libertarian, is completely separate from the category of what the government ought to be allowed to force us to do. So, I mean, I agree with you almost entirely on the mandates. The only thing I'll say about the public employees, though, government employees, they work for us, the taxpayers, the citizens. So I don't know that it's now, it might be wrong, just like because it's unnecessary. I think in a lot of cases it's unnecessary to require these employees to get vaccinated, and especially with the other, natural immunity exception, those other things should be a component of it. But I don't know. In some way they work for us, the citizens, and if we, the citizens, want to require police to get vaccinated and show up for work on time and do a better job, like that we do have that right. They're our employees in some sense.
Right. But then I go back to that question, would you rather fight your own fires? Would you rather fend off your own attacker? Because that's what it's boiling down to. I mean, you got 9,000 of them not showing up for work.
The firefighters usually show up to, get your cat out of the tree. It's not...
Well, right. They show up first for your... Right. If you're in an emergency...
The police show up 10 hours later after the other, right? Let's not... Yeah. These are not... Emergency services are not serving many communities with exceptional levels of service and accountability.
Well, until you're the one that needs that service right then and there. I mean, the firefighters are always the first ones on the scene. So if you're having a heart attack, it's the firefighters that show up typically first. And again, would you rather them not show up because you're saying, well, I'd rather have the heart attack and I'll get myself to the hospital because you're unvaccinated? I mean, that's
no, absolutely not. Personally, I don't care. I don't care if people are vaccinated or not. I do not have any problem dealing with the unvaccinated whatsoever. So no, I don't know that it's unreasonable to. I want people in nursing homes to have to be vaccinated. People who work in nursing homes, I think they should have to be vaccinated, probably.
I think they should be tested. I don't know. The vaccine is clearly, again, the studies are showing it's a 1/3 reduction for a temporary period of time. At some point, and Israel knows this. That's why you can't get into Israel anymore if you've been vaccinated beyond 6 months ago, because they say it wore off. So you need to get a new
Well, it was working.
shot.
I mean, the sad if we'd had the vaccine and we were able to give it to everyone at the very beginning, we probably would have stopped this. The Delta strain is like 7 times more contagious than the initial strain, which the vaccines couldn't stand up to Delta. I think they might have stood up fine to the original, but we'll never know.
I guess you could have a theoretical game of like, if we could have vaccinated 7 billion people all at the same time, you know.
Well, but we did have the vaccine. We find out, we actually had the vaccine. It just takes so long to do testing and approval as people are dying by the hundreds of thousands, which is frustrating.
Well, we'll see how
there's a world in which if they'd have rolled it out 6 months earlier, they might have squashed it and given it to the whole world.
Yeah. Well, we didn't. Sad.
But a lot of the world doesn't want to take it. You know, a lot of Africa is not interested, and so it's not. You know, a lot of people have this notion that that they're just not getting it, but a lot of them don't even want to take it. It's kind of what's gone on in Israel and Palestine. There was this big story saying, "Oh, the Israelis weren't giving it to the Palestinians. Look at how horrible they are." The truth is, the Palestinians didn't want to take it. The Palestinians still don't really want to take it, and that's actually a really interesting area of the world to look at in cases and deaths because they look identical, with one side being 3 dosed in and one side like 25% have taken 1 dose. And they have seen no difference in spread or deaths actually between the 2 areas, which is really, really intriguing. But that's a different topic for a different
I think
day.
if you control for population. But anyway, we can talk about those numbers more later.
They're exactly the same in per million, in per capita. It's identical.
It speaks to the importance of vaccinating the elderly, right? If you have much more vaccination in one population than another, but if they happen to be relatively equally among the elderly, you might end up with roughly equal deaths because those are the.
Yeah. I haven't been vaccinating anybody in Palestine, really, but I mean, it's interesting. So,
all right,
we'll see how these mandates with the cities, and what they're going to do if they decide firefighting is more important or vaccination. We'll see what New York ends up doing.